But 12 months ago, they had the same problem. Today, it's more imperative. If you look at the macro story. So what's been delaying things? And, given the nature of some of the politics in America at the moment, we've got impeachment hearings going on. We've got Iran waivers being discussed, another 60-day extension. Is it possible to make a decision in that environment?
Look, we think so. I mean, it's certainly been harder to get to the top of the pile. Since the original working group, deliberations and report they prepared, it's been very hard. Every time we thought that, we were closer, it kept getting delayed. Certainly with our discussions with people in Congress and those in administration, we say, look, we're out of time. We need to tell our shareholders, what the outcome is with this review. They need to understand, we're getting hammered and with our share price. And we also need to send a clear message to the world of uranium mining and these nuclear fuel products, including the Russians, the Chinese, and the Kazakhs, that the United States of America is not going out of business in this area of the front end.
Okay, I understand. So what are the options on the table now? I mean, we talked before Christmas. You said there's a bunch of options available to the government. We've been reading over here about government buying programs of U.S. Uranium. Have you had conversations? Have you got a sense of what that could be? Is it just guesswork, or is it, what do you know?
Look, we're trying not to make it guesswork because we know that it's better for us to provide some guidance here. I mean, the first thing we want the government to come out and say that the government is supporting the reestablishment of the nuclear fuel cycle in the United States, mining, conversion, and enrichment at a level that at least provides some critical mass so that we have the capability to produce sort of our basic requirements, not all our products, but we can flex up if required. So the number one is we want to be able to show our shareholders, tell the world, or have the government tell the world the conclusions that they've made through both the working group and the Section 232 investigations. That's number one. Number two, we want to see, or we hope to see, immediate demand for uranium mining. Uranium mining is the most challenged first step of the process, and we would like to see the government starting to buy uranium now, like this year, 2020, and onwards, to make sure that the uranium miners can sell their product at fair prices, so that we can get some cash flow reestablished. These companies that are not producing now, zero cash flow, it's not a real good outcome. That's not sustainable for a long period of time. And then lastly, the plan that they announce, we do realize that some of this, or a big chunk of this, is going to have to go through appropriations. The expensive part of the plan is really the enrichment. Uranium mining and conversion already have a lot of the infrastructure in place and are the lesser side of this reestablishing the fuel cycle. But when you start talking about building new enrichment plants, being able to make everything from 495, 235, all the way up to in the 90s, 235, that's going to start costing billions. Now, the government was already planning to reestablish enrichment in the early days, without looking at the uranium and the conversion steps.
Interesting. So if you, just to remind people, US, 20% of their energy is produced by nuclear fusion. There have been a few plants which have come to end of life, a few due to come to end of life. The utilities have got multiple options. They've got gas, they've got oil, they've got renewable. Nuclear is part of that. But for them to invest billions of dollars into upgrading or building new plants must be a big part of the conversation that they're having with government too. So the miners are just a small part of this, but it's got to be joined up thinking, surely.
Yeah, and I think that was a lot of the logic when the president came up with this working group. Now, granted, the working group's main focus was just these first three steps of the fuel cycle. But certainly the government is, the Trump administration is committed to keeping as many nuclear power plants operating, going forward for obvious reasons. I think that the government, like the DOD and DOE, are also getting increasingly optimistic about the micro reactors and the small modular reactors. This new HALEU fuel, which is 20% 235, is also kind of becoming, a product that the government thinks that they will need for the SMRs, particularly. And then lastly, space travel. That's coming back onto the horizon. Now, that probably isn't a large consumer and takes some, time out. But again, I've said it to you many times, it is not time for the United States to not be in this business.
Mark, can I just ask you your view on this Iranian waiver issue at the moment? It's a real political hotbed. The Europeans don't want it. They don't want these waivers removed. I know there's a lot of discussion internally between Pompeo and Mnuchin there, and slight disagreement about it. Is that just a big distraction for you? I guess it's got to be. But what do you do about it?
Look, I think it helps us because I think it shows how sensitive and interrelated, this fuel market is, outside of the United States. Even this morning I was hearing that Trump and Pompeo were wanting the waivers to go away. But they also said, and when I heard this on the radios, Fox News, that, the utilities, they don't want it to go away because they have such a dependency already on the former Soviet Union, the Russians, for fueling their reactors. So it's all interconnected. So people talk about we've got all these stockpiles, we've got all this uranium, we don't need it for another 5 years, 10 years. So obviously the business it couldn't ever be healthy. I know that's not the case. But then when you start looking at if you remove or let these waivers expire, and it starts creating issues where the Russians cannot import into the United States or cut back on that, a lot of these utilities are going to start running out of fuel like within a year. And that should, again, shock people. What happened to all the inventories? Where are all those products? We thought we had, 5-10 years of those products available. We don't.
Well, I'm trying to work out, because there's so little data out there, is, how much inventory is available to US utilities today? What are they sitting on? A year, 2 years, 3 years? Because that makes a big impact on their behavior and their decision making, especially, they don't want high prices.
Yeah, look at the utilities, and look at I understand they want the lowest cost fuel, to keep nuclear as competitive as they can. We know that that fuel is such a small percentage of nuclear generation, but nuclear generation is struggling. But there's uranium's in all these different shapes and forms, and so you got to make sure you keep those into balance with what your requirements are. I think that it just highlights the fact that the United States doesn't have the ability now. Urenco is foreign owned, and it's in New Mexico, and they can do enrichment there up to 495. But we do not have U.S. owned capacity for enrichment. We do have U.S. owned capacity for conversion, but that's shut down right now. I think it just highlights the fact that you do not want to be overly dependent on all these other countries, and you do not want to be in a position to have to fight with one or both of your arms tied behind your back with like the Iranians or whatever, and the relationships they have with the Russians.